Okay.
Driving past it.
If this would be an issue, just let me know.
So, I'm gonna put Steve's on my phone, I can't get that, it has to be a password with an H.
Hold it to my ears and talk.
No, I'm gonna plug it in right, Steve.
You need a Bluetooth speaker so he could be heard.
It's in Rawlins.
I have a Bluetooth in my truck, but I don't know.
So I'm gonna log off of Zoom.
Yes, please,
Okay.
Is this broadcast tonight?
yes.
Yeah.
You can. You can watch it on
But you
YouTube
can't-
as well, you can't talk.
Communicate back.
No, I'm just gonna log off of Zoom and then,
I don't record it short.
I have my golf speaker. That's what I'm saying. In my truck, we could probably,
and we can go from there, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
if you want to do that.
What do you need?
I wanted to go golfing today, but that didn't happen.
I wanted to go to the lake, drop off stuff for the weekend.
But that didn't happen. Tomorrow.
I don't know if I'd have time tomorrow.
It's getting so crazy trying to figure out what all I'm doing for this party.
Yeah, I have a notebook and I have everything here.
The venue alone was $250 to rent it, you know?
Where was it?
The Shriners is where we're doing it. Which is fine.
Yeah.
That's not bad, but
No.
then I had a brisket, and then I'm gonna do pulled pork, and I gotta buy a bunch of other stuff, and it's just like, oh gosh. It's unreal what it costs anymore.
Oh, I know. I just had Garrett's 40th birthday. That was expensive. It was worth it, but it was expensive. He was almost surprised. His mom blew it.
Really?
We're so close. And his mom.
So freaking close. Oh, so I can't really fault her.
They said it was a dementia, she didn't Wouldn't have gone.
He didn't tell me until I asked him. I said, did you know? And he's like, well, Mom kind of let it slip.
And then are we ready to log into the
I'll
meeting?
see you at your
I'm
birthday
not, tell him
party.
not yet, I'm logging in right now.
You holler at me because I can't see you, which is what I normally do, okay? And then I'll reset it.
Do we need that up for the motion or whatever?
Did you get your dinosaur tattoo with somebody else?
Is he making it?
Okay, I'm all set.
Who
Steve?
was the other person?
What?
Oh,
Do we-
Sonia.
Sonia? You matched?
Yeah, hers is pink and purple, mine's blue. It's blue. It's cool, but I need her to redo it. I just haven't had time to get it done.
Okay, so we can, just minutes, you can. You're done, there we go.
Is this all scanned into board docs too? No, it is.
Yes. Roll call, name all the names. Oh, is there a reason? Just when you put Steve via Zoom. You can put that in a minute. Awesome. And we're waiting for the mayor.
Has he texted?
He was here earlier this afternoon and he said he was coming, so I haven't received a text. I received a text from Daryl saying he was running a little late.
Yeah. Browse Facebook.
Well, we have the vice mayor on, he can call the meeting to order.
Can you do it remotely, or did you have it done? Do you
No,
have to
he
be?
can call the meeting remotely.
Okay. I thought you had to be in person, but
I don't,
I just,
excuse me. Panita, can Steve, since he's remotely, call the meeting to order?
Thought you had to be in person, but.
I'm sorry?
Can we call a meeting to order?
As a vice mayor, yes.
But he's remote.
He's remote.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was, I thought that was discussed a while back too.
It was discussed before my time, and I remember seeing a note about it.
You've done it before, Jackie.
But I never did it remotely.
No.
No, but I mean, you've done
Oh.
a meeting.
I don't have that authority anymore.
Tom, can you text Terry?
I think he's coming right now.
Could have started without me. I don't care.
We don't have anybody to call it.
Oh, what was order? I apologize.
All righty. It is 7:35, and I will call this meeting to order. Please join for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That kind of threw me back there.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Terry Wyckoff,
Here.
Vice Mayor Steve Sanger, Councilmember Darrell Gardner, Councilmember Tanya Lumen,
Here.
Councilmember Bruce Seelow,
Here.
Councilmember Chris Weisenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Jacqueline Wells.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to
Councilman
approve
Oz?
the agenda.
I'll second.
There's been a motion made to approve the agenda. As presented, is there any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, thanks. The next thing on our agenda is the first reading of the municipal budget, and I'll turn the floor over. Go ahead.
This is,
We need a motion.
we need a motion.
Oh, okay. I didn't bring my computer, sorry.
You're fine.
Councilman Weisenberg.
I move to approve the first reading and waive the reading of the fiscal year 2024-2025 municipal budget.
Second.
Been a motion made and seconded to approve the first reading and waive the reading of the fiscal year 2024-2025 municipal budget. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
All right. Online voting is closed. The motion passes
Wait.
with 6 yeas.
Okay.
That's,
Oh, wow, you.
no,
we
we're
need
done
that,
if that's the
right.
case. I was trying to call point of order.
Yes, 'cause we need
I was
to-
trying to call point of order because we have to have a discussion on this budget.
Well, you have to say it. I'm looking down here. I'm not a mind
I get
reader.
it. I was trying, like, hey, so we can't.
I will remove the vote.
Yes,
so
thank
we're
you.
good on that. So we're gonna, okay.
That would have been a quick meeting.
It'll make it easy on you. Yeah, it's gonna make it easy on you, Drew.
All right.
We're not on our game tonight.
Yeah, it's all good.
Been a long day.
Yesterday was a long night.
So, let's go over the budget. I'll turn the floor over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. It is an honor tonight to be able to be here with you and to be able to review the first reading of the municipal budget. Where I would like to start our discussion tonight is I'd like to share with council kind of the results of the exercise that we did a couple weeks ago through the Balancing Act software. I'd kind of like to share with you those results, and that heavily influenced our budget this year as to where those numbers kind of fell. So you should have a handout, the smaller one that is titled Balancing Act. And what I have here is the departments that we asked council to adjust the overall department budget to help with the $2.3 million cuts. So the first column is what was on that exercise as a beginning point. And then we took all 7 responses in all of these different areas, and I took an average of the 7. I just took them all added up, divided by 7, and that's what you'll see in the second column is the mean. And then you could see the variance that we had from the original budget. And what I was looking for as part of this was to look down through that variance number, and that's what I wanted to ask department heads to cut in those different areas, because they were kind of the average, kind of the consensus of what council had. And as you could see, those variances, were quite large in some places and not as large in others. And then I calculated a statistical calculation, which is referred to as the standard deviation. And what the standard deviation is if you take the differences within the 7 numbers, the variances, it's a measure of how far off the responses are to each other. And what I was looking for was a consensus in certain areas. And so if everyone were to agree in total, the standard deviation would be 0, if all 7 numbers were the same. And as you can see, as you go down, those are very large numbers, which means that the larger the number means that like one council member would make a cut someplace, and then the other 6 would make cuts somewhere else. It's like there's not a real consensus as to one area or to one item. And as you can see to the far right, there's a percent. That's the standard deviation percent. And some of those numbers get really large, which means that there really is no agreement in those areas with the responses that we received. So with that, it's hard to make the large cuts, because what we would be looking for is consensus in some area with a cut that's, so that I could bring it back and say a majority of council was in this area. So through this exercise, I really couldn't pinpoint those areas where there's a consensus in here on the larger items. And if you look at the second page in there, what I did on the second page is I sorted the columns on the first page by the percent. I just sorted it from smallest to largest, seeing if there was any area that there was a consensus. And the CATS bus was the #1 department that had the most consensus among council. And so everybody left the funding pretty much alone in the CATS bus, everyone. And there was about a 1.51% deviation there. So I know that the council as a whole supports the CATS bus and at the amount that it is funded. Building code enforcement were second, third. And then if you go to the bottom of the page, you can see that the golf course clubhouse had the most division, with a 54% standard deviation. So some of council either left it at the original amount or increased, and then others had deep cuts within that. The streets program, human resources, city manager department, downtown development are the ones that have the most deviation in it. So I just found this interesting looking for those. And the ones at the top with the smallest deviations did not have deep cuts by council. They were pretty much left at their original balance. So the conclusion of that exercise to me basically is that we need to work in the near future on a consensus with the services that the city provides. We need to explore those services, document those services, and bring those services to council with a priority so that we can know how that we should work with the budget. So there's really not enough consensus there to make deep cuts this year. So I do have the budget here, and I can tell you that it is a balanced budget within the general fund. Okay, what is presented to you tonight? It's not going to be exactly in the format that everybody would choose how to balance the budget, but what I will present tonight to you will be a balanced budget with some deep cuts in certain areas, and other areas there isn't going to be the deep cuts. So when we get there, it is a balanced budget. What I felt from our exercise, as you will see in the next couple pages that you have in the small packet, I came up with a few focuses for next year that I feel that we should focus on as staff of the city, as city council, so that we can unite ourselves closer into the services that we provide, what the city's about, and what we want our city to look like. The number one thought that I have is we have talked about a strategic plan. I feel at this point that what we should build is a comprehensive community plan to where we go throughout our community in every aspect, on every corner, and put down our thoughts as council, as staff, document that into a good-sized report which will tell us what our land use is, how our policies affect, what the economic development is, all those different areas. And we could build committees, get council input. And I feel that if we work towards this plan, we can build unity amongst us all as we discuss the different aspects that we have within the city, and to be able to put a priority onto that. One of the other areas that I feel that we lack right now city-wise is we need a financial information system that will produce good, consistent numbers. And I feel that's at the base of what we do, because that's where the real accountability comes in as to whether or not we're reaching our goals or we're not reaching our goals. And we have contracted with Software Solutions, and that is in the works. And we will update council as we go, but we really feel that if we had that system in place, it would help us financially to help us understand our budget more, where we're spending our money, and if we're reaching our financial goals or not. We definitely need to improve upon our financial reporting to council so that council knows where everything stands financially for reaching those goals. We need to set financial goals. We need to set revenue margins in the different areas of the city that has revenue that offsets their expenditures, like the golf course, rec center, water, sewer, and those things. And if we had that information, I think it'd become more clear the pathway forward. We definitely need financial policies, procedures that we currently don't have that would help. We need to work with department heads how to manage and lead within their financial budgets. And right now, I think that there is a disconnect there. As you can see on the second page, I went to the audit report and I pulled out how much budget was left as to what was budgeted, as to what was actually spent. And in 2023, there was $2.3 million left in the budget that had not been expended. That's about the amount of the cuts that we were looking for. Now, some of those are a result of staffing shortages in different areas, but I think we really need to analyze that to help us, because 2.3 is about what I asked council to cut, and that's what was left in the budget in 23. You can see my other ideas there on that sheet. I think that we need to find resources to put towards salaries. We've had inflation that has been double digits, and we haven't increased salaries, wages at all during that time. And I believe that we've kind of fallen out of the market a little bit, or we've slid down the market with our ability to recruit. We need to restructure our salary pay grades. I feel that they're outdated. There's a lot of improvement. Update capital asset listings. We put together a funded depreciation schedule, and then we found out that the actual schedules that we were building that on were not accurate. So we just could, the assets listed on there had been disposed of and not taken off, and we just haven't been giving that proper attention. It's hard to fund for depreciation when you don't know what capital we have. And then last of all is we need some leadership development among department heads and supervisors. So with that, those are my ideas moving forward that I feel will help us budget-wise, that we need to really focus on so that we can focus on what's important to the city, the city council, the city of Rawlins, and accomplish those goals, where right now I feel that it's pretty loose right now in what we do. So,
Councilman Weisenberg?
Tom, on that 2.3 that you said was not spent, what is there carryover included, things that items, capital items, stuff like that included in that 2.3 that should have been purchased that they're waiting on?
yeah, there was some capital items, but a majority of that was salaries, positions that we could not fill, with staff. They were just open positions. Like within the police department, we had 5 to 7 officers that we were short. But there's an awful lot of materials, contractual services, and those types of things that were built into the budget that just were not spent. And I think those are the items that we need to look at to cut back if we're going to balance the budget.
Do you know what the amount of the capital items are, possibly, roughly?
It is in the previous budget book.
Okay.
I can. pull that
I just
number.
want to see how much pulls out of that 2.3 on carryover.
Yeah, because some of that was capital because of the supply chain.
Well, like last night, Anthony was talking about he had ordered something at the beginning of the year and he's going to get it next month, maybe, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Even though it is unspent funds, but it's dedicated. So,
That's true.
so you know, there's probably more of that than.
Yeah, and there is a lot of that in there.
I just want to make sure we're aware of, like you're saying, the 2.3 right there, that those items aren't left behind, right? Especially if they've been ordered or
Yeah.
allocated out to it.
But I feel that in any budget process, there's a tendency to over budget. There's always the what ifs. You know, if this happens, I need budget. If this happens, I need budget. Well, that's understandable, but at the end of the day, when it's hurting the organization because it's within the budget can't be used for salaries or other areas, and then the next year you put it back in. Those are the things that I feel that we need to watch, and that comes through a lot of leadership training, you know, following budgets, tying the budget to the operations. We have tremendous department heads that understand the operations of what they do, but sometimes tying it back to the financial accountability is a struggle.
Well, and yeah, supply chain, I mean, it's so complicated.
Yeah, and there's
Very
a lot that
complex,
goes into it.
yeah.
So anyway, with that, we can dive into the budget document. I can say that within the general fund, a majority of this will tie back to the preliminary budget that we had, that we went over. If you look at the revenue numbers, they're almost identical to the preliminary budget. One point that I want to make with the revenue is that within the next 5 or 6 years, there is a potential of increased revenues. Large increases within the revenues. So all of the work being done within Carbon County is taxable through sales tax. And as they pay that sales tax, we will receive our portion of that. So the estimates that I have in here for revenue is what I feel is our baseline revenue. So I tried not to include a lot of those items that would be over this, but in 5 or 6 years, when all that is over and we are back at our base, that's where I budgeted revenues here, is so that we stay. Because if we were to implement that into our operations, at the end of the 5 years, when the revenue goes away, our operating expenditures will be high, and we will really be in a deficit at that point. So, so for most of that excess, if we let that come in and go to cash reserves, council then can decide how those reserves should be spent, either on funded depreciations, dilapidated buildings, construction, whatever council feels at that point. So when you look at the revenues, you go back to,
You'll have to give us page
yeah,
numbers.
I'll find the page number here. On
15.
page 15. On page 15, you'll see the general fund revenues in the left, and these are summarized. There's lots of line items that go within here. But if you look at sales tax or we can go through these real quick. The mineral taxes come from the state of Wyoming through their mineral resources, and severance taxes, royalties. The state, through the Craig report, feels that there will be a slight decrease in those. As we know, oil, coal, some of those things aren't as strong as they were. And so we are starting to see a dip in there. Sales tax, general, is the amount that we get from the state of Wyoming just for sales and use taxes. And as you can see, in fiscal year 24 budget was a little larger than this year, and that's because we added a little bit in, expecting to receive that to help balance the budget. The $7,126,000 for 25 is what I feel is the baseline increase that we've been getting each year. The supplemental sales tax is the direct distribution that we get through the legislature. And as you can see, that's about a $220,000 decrease from the year before through that direct distribution. And that was through the governor's recommendation that goes through the legislature. And what the original intent of that was to make up sales tax for food when it was categorized as a non-taxable, and that's where it all started, but it is more now just a direct distribution through the state. Not so much tied to that, but they add or subtract to it now. But that was the original intent, is when food was not taxable, cities would be harmed by that because they would lose that sales tax. So property tax comes through Carbon County, and that's just the property taxes through a mill levy that we have. And the mill levies come due in May and November of each year, so we get those in during that time frame. And sometimes there is, at the end of the year, a timing, as to when that comes in. Gasoline tax, cigarette tax, lodger's tax, all comes through the state through a formula to where that they collect the gas tax off of sales, cigarettes, and then we get our part of the formula. Franchise fees are where utilities rent our land or use city land for towers and those things, and that's the royalties that they pay the city that we're able to keep. As you go down, those are just the normal revenues that we have. Charges for services include the rates that we looked at in January. Most of those are included in there. Interdepartmental, we have a revenue here, and what that is our central garage does work, repair work and those things for the enterprise funds, and that's just the amount that the enterprise funds have to pay for those repairs to their equipment. Interest stays the same. On our estimates, we do feel that over time we'll be able to invest more funds and receive more interest. We are working with the local banks right now with the pledging requirements. As those funds become more liquid at the bank, we will invest those funds. And then miscellaneous will include the horse racing, the wild lottery, and those types of things that the city receives. So those are pretty consistent with what was in the preliminary budget. And then what you will see below then is all the departments throughout the general fund and their budget allocations for each of those departments. And we will touch on those briefly as we go throughout the budget.
Tom, in 2023, we brought in almost 14 million. Why is there a 2 million decrease for the proposed?
Okay, so under the sales tax, there was a lot of one-time items happening throughout Carbon County. So we did receive additional sales tax that I would classify as one-time. And like I said, our numbers for April 30th of this year have almost hit the budget amount for
Yeah.
24. And there again, we feel it's the work on the transmission line that has increased those sales tax. But after those projects go, it will drop again.
Councilman Weisenberg?
Tom, there's a big discrepancy between the 2023 and even 2024 budget, the actual, what was, on the interdepartmental. Is that a
Correct.
typo or?
No, so what happened in 23, to my understanding is that the finance office, city manager at the time looked for any service that was provided by the general fund to the enterprise funds, such as human resources work, finance time that should have been allocated. And so what they did is they broke all that out and then transferred the funds from the enterprise funds to the general fund to cover all those expenditures. Now, what we found in 2024 budget was the sewer fund and the water fund did not have any reserves. They didn't have the funds to look for those items to transfer to the general fund. The funds just were not there. And so we have it down now to the repairs to the equipment, but the other items that were allocated to the water, sewer, landfill fund, such as, human resources work, utilities work, and all those different things, we just left that within the general fund until time that there were sufficient reserves in the enterprise funds to pay for those services.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
seen
Because that is a
700,
substantial
it's over
increase.
700,000.
But if we would have remained at those levels, and I'll be honest, when I got in, I did not see a reconciliation of that, not to say it didn't exist. But I looked at those amounts and what was happening to the water and sewer funds, and I thought, we are bankrupting those funds just on the services that the general fund provides, so.
Okay, and then the other thing I was gonna ask is, the supplemental is the direct distribution, we're down 200,000 on that. I thought they were given more this year, wasn't it?
No, it was a
Allocated?
substantial decrease from last year. I believe,
Is it just to different municipalities? Because the amount that was voted on was increased, correct? In
no,
the
I
state?
think it decreased. I'll look right here in this. This will have a description. But last year that they proposed an amount, the governor proposed it, the legislature cut it back. The governor put it back into a higher number that they accepted the legislature last year. This year it came in at a much lower number.
And he just didn't put it back to a high
And it
number
wasn't
or
put
whatever?
back in.
Okay.
And that number and most of the other numbers comes from two different documents revenue-wise. The first is the Consensus Revenue Estimating Group, which is called the Craig Report. We went through this really well and looked at sales tax increases, all the different revenues that the state are estimated there. And then the second report that was emailed to council a while back is a budget preparation handbook that we received from WAM. And if you go through the revenue descriptions for all the different revenues in here, you will find those within the budget. Back on, they begin on page 39, and they go through page 44. You will see that it has cigarette tax, the proposed amount, and a description. Most of that comes through the WAM budget handbook that I wanted to share, put in so that you know how it's calculated and why we came to those amounts. But it is heavily influenced by the Craig report as well as the WAM budget handbook. So we do not vary from that very far. The Craig report had increased sales tax, but it was due to projects, not so much the sales tax base that we have.
And the Craig report is usually fairly accurate, correct?
It is fairly accurate. So they put that out in January, and it's a very detailed report. And then in April, they come back to revise their estimates or say kind of what's happening. And the Craig report's very accurate at a state level. You know, not so much Carbon County, but at the overall state level. But we tie in pretty heavily to the economy of the state, the ups and downs. But like I said, we're gonna get a lot of one-time money. And I just felt like we need to put that aside for council discretion to be spent versus trying to put it towards salaries or one-time or to operating expenses, so.
Makes sense.
All right, you can read through the revenue. That's pretty much how we estimated it. If you'll go back to page 49, we will start in on the departments, the cost centers through the general fund. So on page 49 is the city council budget. So the city council as a whole is a department, and the spending there, like I said, gets recorded. If you turn to page 50, what you will see here is a calculation from the balancing act exercise that we did for each of the departments. So what you will see on page 50, I put the amounts from council members. I excluded the comments. I felt like the comments should be directed to me, not so much to the public. So the comments were removed, but the actual amounts are there with the submission ID so that people don't know which council member voted which way, because I felt that that isn't public information. So anyway, you will see city council wise, all 7 responses from council, the total, and then I did an average of it. And when I looked at the average and looked at the numbers, you will see that the council person, third from the bottom, 137,938 submission ID, had a larger cut than the other 6. So substantial. So what I did then is I took the average of the 6 and I took the outlier out. And I averaged the top 6, and then I compared that to the original budget, And those are the amounts that I went to department heads and I said, you need to cut these amounts. Look through your budgets, these are the budget cuts that you need to make because I feel that they are united through council and they make, and they are reachable. Department heads could reach them. And so if you look on page 50, you will see kind of a written explanation as to what was cut. You go to the next page, 51, and you will find 3 different sections. Number 1 is, and you will see this on each department that we have, the staffing numbers that we have for that department. So within these city council, we have 7 part-time positions. And then I have a budget summary for you as to total salaries, benefits, contractual services, materials and supplies that council incurs.
What kind of benefits do we have?
Yeah.
That equate to $8,000.
So the employee benefits for everyone will include 7.65% as the Social Security match. So on all wages that are paid throughout the city, we have to pay Social Security tax. The employee pays 7.65 and the employer has to match that.
Got it,
And
okay.
then the other one is workers' comp. And that, we had in here, I believe, at 4.7%. So
we can get hurt.
So if you get hurt on the job, you are covered by workers' comp.
I didn't know that.
As long as you're in your council seat or out doing council business. So those are the benefits that the council would have. On the employee side, full-time employees have those same 2, but then they also have Wyoming retirement. And the city and the employee basically splits that contribution so that the city pays, a portion, and then a portion comes out of the employee's checks. And the other one that you will see throughout here is employee health insurance costs. Will also come out of there as we get further back in. And so for council, it's 66,000 overall wages. Benefits you see there, contractual services include the membership to WAM, which runs about 12,000 a year. And then it also includes council travel back and forth to conferences, to WAM and any other travel. And then materials and supplies, there's a $500 budget for supplies that the council would need if it's there. If you flip to page 52, you will see more of the line items. Okay, so 52, the totals from all these different categories roll forward into that summary on the previous page. So if you go back to page 52, you can see salaries, you can see employee benefits, what we pay in workers' comp, travel and training, dues and fees, and the supplies. And that's what will be consistent throughout. So if you look at page 50, we needed to cut $656 according to our formula. So we went back and took that, I believe, out of travel and training for council cuts. So that budget last year was 10,000. That's reduced to 9,344. So council will have to be a little bit more cognizant of the travel costs because there's just a little less in there through a cut. And that's how the rest of these departments will operate. It's exactly the same format. If you look at page 53, you have the city manager budget. And the city manager budget had a couple deep cuts from council. And the variance here, the standard deviation is large because of the variances. One council cut it back to 149,000, and one council person left it the same, and there's just a lot of different cuts in there. So if you average it, the budget cuts that would be to the city manager's office would be 39,152, if you can see that number on the sheet. And from what I could do within that budget safely is I could cut about 28,000. There's still about $11,000 in there that I will have to cut something essential out of my budget, is what I'm saying, which council has spoken that that's the amount, and I will keep searching for that, but right now I'm 11,000 short.
So 28,000, you're saying you could find in your budget to cut without going essential. What does those cuts include?
So we had money in there for strategic plan projects, and we took a lot of that out of there, about 14,000. We had some software in there that we felt we could track through Excel or through other means than to purchase, the software through the vendor. And I think those were the main cuts in there.
Did you do the same thing you did with ours and take out the outlier that?
Yes,
Okay.
I did. So if you see on there, on page 54, you'll see all 7 responses, and then you have the average of all 7, and then you'll have the average of 6.
Okay.
So that takes the outlier out. The original budget was 451. The average of 6 is 412, which leaves 39,000 in cuts. And then if you look at, and on the others, the average of 6 that we are cutting 2, if you go to the next page, you will see the total of the expenditures equal that. But for the city manager's office, there's still 11,000 that has to be cut there. If you look back on page 56, you can see the different line items that we have in there, and you can see that some of these are pretty slim. It's hard to run the city manager's office without some of these items. The strategic plan projects here is a match on an economic development grant that we felt that we needed to leave that in. But if you take that out, we're down, pretty slim. We would be looking at, throughout the general fund, staffing is what we would be looking at as our next step to help reduce the budget.
And you have two people?
And so if you look on
Three.
page 53, you will see that I have 3, and you
Okay.
can see their positions.
And two are mandated by law.
Yes.
2 of them are in state statute, and
Okay.
one in the city manager office is not. Correct. All right, we can, I don't know if you want to go department by department, I can. If you feel like you want to read through there, or certain departments you want me to look at, I can just touch on them briefly, if you would like. City Attorney's Office. we were able to make the cuts, and then if you look back on page 60, under the consultant contracts, we had a large budget amount in '24 of about $88,000, and what that was for the city attorney at the time. It was for outside resources to be accessed either for training purposes or for certain help. Throughout the years, we have not reached that high. In 2024, that amount is large because that was the contracted attorneys that we had in at the time. So we felt from the preliminary budget that we could cut $50,000 out of that. And so those were additional cuts that we had, and we left that at about $25,000. And that is a little thin. If we need to use outside legal counsel, we would be looking at a budget amendment if it got much larger than that.
I see on the city attorney part, that in that we have we're funding 2 positions, but we do have, 1 employee that's about to get a paralegal.
Correct.
And then we will need a secretary also. That would relieve us from having to have 2 attorneys. Is that accounted in here?
I don't have that accounted in here,
I kind of think we need to.
but I think that is, yes.
No, I don't kind of think we need to. I think we need to. Let me rephrase that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. The paralegal, yes, is a different pay grade promotion, and that's what we need to do.
I realize that's going the wrong direction, but
Lynn will write that down, and I'll make sure in the second reading that we look for those funds for that increase.
okay.
Yeah, and we had talked about that. I apologize.
No worries. I
Get in there.
just know it's important, and that would also help relieve some of the outside legal,
Yeah.
as well as not run our current city attorney off from overwork.
Well, she's the reason we made the cuts. I know she can handle it. So.
She's smiling a little.
She's about ready to hit me.
You're sitting pretty close. Well, I just know that by having that other position, the outside legal will go down enough to cover that. I just believe it.
Yeah,
So,
that can be a shift.
okay.
All right, on page 61 is the municipal judge. There was about $1,354 worth of cuts through our formula that we had. We were able to cut the court and legal fees account a little bit down to make those cuts. So there is a good example. You'll see on page 62, the average of the 6, $201,680. You turn to page 63, and that is the grand total of all those expenditures. So we tied it, back and forth to that formula and made those cuts. Page 64 is a little bit more of a detail of that. Information technology is page 65. And as you know, a couple of years ago, we had a information technology specialist, and when he left the organization, we contracted out with an outside contractor. So a majority of those costs are the contractual services to that company. And the rest of the costs there are supplies, software renewals, and tech supplies.
How long is their contract? How long is their contract?
I believe we negotiated annually.
When's
And
that
so
coming
that
up?
will be coming up for negotiation again.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been very pleased with their services.
Okay.
They helped us through the breach and through a lot of
Yeah.
those things, so.
At first, I wasn't sure, but they've really, once they figured out our system and stuff, it has really smoothed out.
Yes. One thing to consider in IT right now is, and I failed to mention earlier, I don't have any capital in here for these areas yet. Departments, these are just the operating. But under the IT department, we have several servers that are in our server room that are past end of life.
Making some noise.
If you're downstairs sometimes in meeting, you'll hear some sounds coming from the room next to you. They're just getting, and so that's one of the areas that I feel we need to either upgrade the servers or try to move as much as we can to the cloud. And get away from, the servers, so. The next department on page 69 is Human Resources. The standard deviation on Human Resources was large. Currently, we do not utilize a director, like a Human Resources director. What we utilize is a human resources technician that helps payroll with like the onboarding, offboarding processes, employee files, that kind of handles the HR responsibilities. What we lack with a director are several things that are key to the organization, such as mediation, arbitration, education and FMLA stuff, a lot of the legal sides of that. And so it was interesting where the numbers came out from council, and there is a large deviation there. So that is one of the areas that we need to work on through the city to come to a consensus as to how that area should be staffed and done. 2 council people cut it back even further than it was, and 3 staff left it where it was. So anyway, we were looking for cuts of about 23,000, and some of those cuts without a director we could make through travel and training that we had in for a director. We have not had large amounts of unemployment we've had to pay, so there's different areas there that you could read that we cut back to make those cuts in HR. But I believe that we are critically low in HR. If you look at page 71, the actual expenditures in 2023 were $316,000, and our budget for next year is at $145,000. So we have really cut those back a lot in human resources, and as with every area, that comes with a cost. Included in human resources, if you look on 72 under the contractual, you'll see that a lot of our testing ends up here, drug and alcohol testing, medical, and those types of things are in there. The one that I'd like to draw your attention to is the education reimbursement. In 2023, we reimbursed about $98,000 in educational cost, which would be college tuition or training programs, like for a associate's degree in the different areas. We have cut that out. Last year, it was taken to 0 and we left it there. That is one area that we may circle a little bit in there because education, you know, with what we do is always a good thing to encourage. And that's a personal belief, but I think, you know, a lot of that to encourage that with staff, with ties that they have to work a couple of years, you know, for us to reimburse it. But that's one area I don't want to lose sight of through the cuts.
I agree. I think last year we had discussed this too, to try and get something added in, and we were talking about maybe seeing if we could do it this year. We didn't know how much we could add in, but it was talked about to make sure we could offer that kind of benefit to the employees, because it was utilized prior. And I do remember that conversation. I think Councilwoman Lumen was even involved in that conversation, trying to push for it too. So
Yeah.
I think if we could get, the sooner the better to get that
I
back
think
in.
it is a critical thing, because a lot of our staff are asked to do things that, you know, they need some knowledge.
I think, I mean, with that, there could be stipulations added to that, you know, if they're going after a degree that's, you know, within their field, obviously that, you know, we could help with that. We could, like you mentioned, put a contract to them that they have to stay for so long, or what, you know, or reimburse prorated rates or whatever on their education too. I think in this day and age, people need educations, and I think this is a way to get it, you know, to help out, so.
Correct, and I feel throughout the city, especially like in the finance area, staff understand processes very well, that they can handle those processes. But when it comes to like the nuances of how accounting works and how it influences throughout the city what they do, I think some help there at education would be critical. They handle their jobs well, they're very good at what they do, but just that extra knowledge a little bit above to understand how it impacts the organization is.
So
It's a good
my
way.
job has an educational payback system. So you have to pass your classes, of course, and then you get reimbursed. It's fully paid for if you stay for 2 years.
Yeah,
If you leave after a year, you gotta pay half of it back. If you leave in 2 months, you gotta pay it all back. So that might be something we could consider.
I think to look into that.
Well, and laws change, times change, and to stay current, it's, you have to have continuing education in some of those fields.
Yeah, I think it's always a good thing.
Honestly, I want to see something added in there for this. I know it's going to increase something, but we need to do something, right? Because we just keep kicking it down the road. Where are we going to kick it again?
Yeah.
Where
Okay,
are we gonna take it from?
but
That's
I get
where I
we're going to have to take something, but we're going to,
Yeah.
We're taking a lot.
I will show here when we get through the general fund how we balanced it, and that will give you a lot better picture of
okay.
how this comes together. Okay, the CATS bus on 73, you can see that we made cuts of $98 is kind of what it averaged out. That's the number one department that council agreed upon. So we just took that out of the fuel costs. And $98 is, sometimes we have that left over at the end of the year. Sometimes we're looking for stuff, but that's where in fact, you look on page 76, that's about the only area we have to cut with the CATS bus.
And we did increase fees, but that's added fees into that
Yes, we
too,
did,
right?
and that's on the revenue side. of this, and what I wanted to do, what my intentions were, was to have an income statement for each of these areas to show the revenue margin. But the fee increase within the CATS bus, even though it's a large increase from 50 cents to $2 when you're paying that, when you look at $57,000 in the budget, it doesn't move those numbers very much.
Okay.
Finance department, this was an area where there were some large cuts. We were asked to cut about $35,000. We were able to cut back a lot on expenses related to the finance director, such as training and those types of things. And so like for my own licenses that I hold and things, it's been moved to the city manager budget. Taken out of there, we could get those removed out of the finance area. But this is an area where the opportunity to cut, we are definitely looking up into the staffing area of that. And as we work on the accounting system and look at attrition, this is a possibility of that. But it is staffed right now with the current processes where it needs to be. We would suffer a lot without a staff person.
I don't think we could cut that until we get that software program up, running and totally effective. And by that time, attrition would be,
I think it will
make sense.
occur, and I think it makes sense at that time.
So what does this do about the finance director?
Well, my hope was, and that's a great question, my hope was through the budget exercise, is I was hoping through the original Balancing Act one that we would have enough to put some money towards salaries. And I feel that's an area to recruit. We're gonna have to add to it. I'm just gonna say it. We're gonna have to add to that to recruit a finance director. So the applications that we've had where I have made a phone call and they've asked salary, they've always dropped out. There are some others that are experienced in financial fields, like finance, but they aren't schooled in like debits, credits, month-end GL systems. And so we actually removed that from the website last month with the hope that we could find money to throw a little bit and rebrand that position as we recruit. But I can tell you where we're at in here. The funds aren't there currently to do that. We would have to dig into cash reserves or additional revenues if we were to look at that. So
Well, that's a very important position, as far as I'm concerned.
I have learned how critical that is. Yeah.
And that's a good question, Councilman Weissenberg asked, is that a statutorily
Yes.
required position?
Yeah, so I
thought
could
it
not
was.
cut that out of the budget and not hire it.
Okay.
But, so it is still in the organizational structure, we still want to openly recruit for that position. Yeah, and the budget is in here for it, at the amount from the salary schedule currently. So if we could recruit at that amount, we most definitely would. But we feel to get really good talent, we're gonna have to increase the pay to recruit, so.
And you've looked into some kind of position off the universities, several different universities to come here.
We have,
Right.
with the job market right now, most of the college graduates have been communicating with the large corporations or accounting firms for a couple of years now. And a lot of Wyoming graduates look towards the Denver market. They just do. It's there, Fort Collins market or the larger markets.
Can we do a billboard?
And, and I don't know, so for any small town within the state, it's hard, just not Rawlins, we're not different than the others. But it is hard to recruit, and where I wanna go
Internships.
financially, we need a very strong candidate. We just do, because we're in need of process change, policy change. And I think a recent graduate would struggle with the level that we need right now.
Yeah.
And I think down the road, it makes sense once we get those things in place. Okay, the non-departmental, on page 81, you can see that the amounts through council were about 20,000, and what happened here is we just went through our insurance renewal through Crest Insurance and through LGLP, and we've received substantial increases in both of those that we did not know when we put this budget together. But what we found as a result of those increases is that a lot of those increases are in the enterprise funds. So the budget that we put in here has that the whole bill, the insurance, but we need to break that out to those different funds, and that will bring the overall budget down in here. One area in here under the consultant contracts is the software that we use. It's called Cassell. And the new software solutions, we did not budget in here for the first year, but we recommend that goes against the impact assistance funds for the first year till we get it set up. And then once it is set up, we would move it here and take Cassell out. So the software costs haven't really increased, although we will have to pay Cassell and Software Solutions next year. Like I said, we're gonna put that, if we can, towards impact assistance, so.
That is a one-time
And
expense.
that's a one-time expense that we believe those increases are a result of the impact of the pipeline to the community, so. Yeah, so that's the non-departmental. Public Works Administration, we looked at about 5,600 in cuts. I met with Mr. Gill, the Public Works Director. We were able to cut that out of the consultant contracts for the engineering that he uses for outside consultants, and if we get in a bind, we'll have to come for a budget amendment. But that's the Public Works. Central Warehouse, on page 89, we looked for about $8,114 through our formula. And as you can see, the main expense in there is the heavy equipment maintenance on page 92. And this is a interesting account, because as our equipment ages, if it isn't replaced on a schedule, it just continues to age and the maintenance goes up.
Pay for it one way or another.
Fiscal year '23, heavy equipment maintenance got up to $125,000. Most of that is the result of the snow removal that year, where we had a lot of snow. But you could see in fiscal year '24, we had a $100,000 budget, and they've already maxed that out at the end of April. So we will be coming to council in the month of June for a budget amendment on that, obviously. And with the cuts, we didn't have really anywhere else in there to cut. So we've taken that back to 97,000 for '25. And that's just our initial point, and we will come to council with updates as we go through the year, so.
On that heavy equipment stuff, is that contracted out, a lot of that contracted out for some of that service, or is it in-house?
Most of that, I believe, is in-house. Lou can answer that.
It's in-house, the only stuff that's contracted out is what we have leased out of the landfill.
Okay, and then with that stuff, then is there an opportunity to look at like a vendor to reduce costs on different things as far as like utilizing one individual, one vendor for say parts and stuff and get a cost break on just different things like that? It might help you out.
And with that, we do have our mechanics that are well knowledged. The only thing they really don't touch are the leased equipment with the warranties that are on them. So as far as reaching out to get an outside to take care of that, I think we're far ahead with who we have working in our department now.
I'm just thinking more along like parts, service, stuff like that. If we utilize just one person or one warehouse type situation, you could possibly reduce some costs there too.
Well, even with our parts, you basically have to shop around to get what you can find at the time.
Okay.
Is most of our equipment the same brand, Lou, like for filters? So you don't have to have 100 different kinds of filters and...
We have, I know our landfill has CAT. I know Cody's got a loader that's a Volvo. So in the near future, when some of this gets depreciated out, we're looking to go with just one brand, so everything's intermingled together with filters, fuel filters, air filters. That's what our ultimate goal is.
And training and... yeah.
Yes, sir.
And I noticed a lot of the stuff in parks were, and it makes sense that they're John Deere. And most of it's John Deere, and that makes sense. But I know if you have 10 different brands or whatever, you have much more inventory to buy and control and so forth.
Yes, and that's ultimately, like I said, that's what we want to do, is go with one brand. What we have at the landfill now are CATs. We got a couple loaders that are beyond their expectancy to be producing out at the landfill. We'll be looking at working on them to possibly get them traded for leased equipment.
Leasing makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. Okay, on page 93 is our streets. You can see within the streets department, we looked for 13,417. We made those cuts, I believe, through materials and the hot plant mix that we have. Through our balancing act, I started at $1 million in street projects in there that would be overlays, road repairs, pothole repairs, those types of things, to add $1 million in, and I will share, in order to balance the budget, we had to remove that for now.
The entire million?
Correct.
Mm.
And so there is some in here for some of those items, but it's the normal amount that we budget each year for like potholes, but it's not like program to start and to do certain neighborhoods and streets. That could always be a one-time expenditure to put that back in, because you have reserves and we should be getting revenues of over $1 million. We could always look at that as a one-time to get that started, but for right now, we had to remove it to balance. Building maintenance is on 97. We looked for 6,200 in there, and we reduced essentially the supplies accounts. Here again, if you look on page 100, their major expense that they have is buildings and grounds maintenance. And we have, I believe, 12 different buildings that we maintain. And all of those maintenance costs basically end up here. For Mr. Lascano's staff that are out working on those buildings. The other major expense there is streetlights. So all the lights throughout the town that are on city property, that's what we have to pay the electrical bill on those, and that comes through here, and we set that at $130,000. So we have cut that back quite a bit to where we're gonna have to watch what we maintain and how we maintain it. Community development is on page 101. We looked for about 6,200 in budget cuts, and we made those through the consultant contracts. In there, I don't know what else there. That's basically what they have there, a little bit, materials and supplies. But we were able to find that. On page 105 is the economic development department, and the reason I still have this in here is that we had actual numbers back in fiscal year 23 when we had an economic development director. The budgets for the current year in there are 0. The same goes for the grants coordinator, page 108. You can see the amount spent in 23, nothing in 24, and we don't propose any for 25. Building code enforcement is on page 111. Here, the council was united to essentially leave that balance as it was. There were not a lot of cuts. So we looked for $541, and we took that out of travel and training in that area, which still leaves just over $4,000 in budget for travel and training. On page 115 now, we get into our public safety.
Councilman Weisenberg.
Is there gonna be enough with 4,000 in there for possible certifications needed and stuff like that?
That's gonna be awful tight. We are looking at a new hire there, and yes, there's gonna be certification needs to happen.
And here again, we're talking, I know we gotta make cuts and stuff like that, but that's gonna be a requirement, you know, it's gonna have to be done, so.
Yes, and
At 4,000, it's,
well, the other thing is with the amount of the formula with the cuts, we don't have anywhere else in there to cut.
yeah, no, I understand.
But I get your point too, in that that could reach a high this year because of the amount of training to get those certifications.
Could I ask Lou a question? On to become a certified building code enforcement person, what does it cost to become certified, or what is there, what besides the reading endless books, but what is the cost to do that?
Depending on the certification, you would have a residential building inspector, commercial, plans examiner. They range anywhere from 15 to 2,000 by the time you take the class, you get your test, and move on to the next one. So in a year, you could probably, with 4,000, you could get two main ones, your commercial and your plans examiner.
Okay.
Does that keep your certifications there too with expenditures?
Yes, once you establish your credentials, then you have credit hours that you have to attain every year. So in the process, I think I'll be going tomorrow to get my research, and that'll keep me good for 3 more years. So
Okay.
we'll have somebody to fall back on once we get the new hire on to work towards them.
Okay.
And so once you're certified, just every 3 years you have to recertify?
Yes, and then your credit hours are gonna be based on the amount of certifications that you have. So, basically, the sky's the limit on what you wanna certify in. The state fire marshal's office requires that you have plans examiner, commercial building. And we, as a courtesy to us as the inspectors, we have the residential, so we're not holding anybody up. Well, like now, once we get our new hire on, then I'll be doing them and covering that till the person gets certified. And then there's gonna be, from start to finish, you're probably looking at about a year, once you're fully set to go on your own.
To get all 3 of those? Or just one?
You really don't want to push it. Right now, like I say, what we're looking for is a commercial and a plans examiner.
Okay.
Once we have them, I can do the residentials. So we'll have each other to fall back on to make sure that we keep the city moving.
Otherwise, you have to wait for a state to come in and inspect, correct?
Well, the state does the electrical. We're not home ruled. They still do the public buildings, schools, the penitentiary. So they're all involved with that. And now with the food trailers that Alan's been going to, they started doing them, and they're certifying the food trailers now as well. So there's a full line of certifications that you can get. Like I say, the sky's the limit on what you want to be certified in, but you just have to keep them credit hours up.
Okay, thank you. That helps me
Thanks.
know more.
Okay, police administration is on page 115. Council here, we're divided, as you could see the numbers on there, kind of as to where the funding is, which I believe we looked at some services, maybe some shift in services. So we were looking for 479,000 would have been the cuts based on, like I said, our formula. If we were to make those, we would definitely be looking at shifts in services that we provide. And we are willing to look into that, but it takes some time in some of those areas to define those services and to be able to make those cuts. And so a recommendation that we have made here that you will see on page 116 is freezing 3 different positions. We have currently 3 frozen positions within police, and we have 6 openings. Now, the odds of filling that by the end of next year are slim. But, so we felt here that as part of those cuts, we would just keep those 3 frozen. And then we still need to make about $88,000 in cuts there. So we kind of went through things, but there's still some substantial work to be done in this area. So where the original budget was is where it still remains for the police department, with those frozen positions going in to help balance the budget. Animal control is on page 120.
Councilman Weisenberg?
Sorry. So 3 frozen positions adds to the 287,
That's
right?
what it adds to.
So with them being frozen, isn't that still gonna be inside the budget? It's just not gonna be allocated to that position? Is that what you're, for
No,
that?
in order to balance the budget for this year, that has to be removed from the budget to balance.
So-
That does not mean we've eliminated those
Okay.
positions permanently. We put them on a frozen
Okay, I just wanna
status.
make sure you're.
And they're not budgeted for.
Correct, they're not budgeted for.
Okay.
So if we are able to hire those positions, we'd have to come to council and ask to unfreeze those
Okay.
and amend the budget, so. Okay, animal control is on page 120. We were looking for just under $7,000 in cuts. As you could see, we were able to make those cuts basically through the contractual services category and a little bit through materials and supplies. Here again, they are cuts that are deep enough, we'll have to really watch what we do. You know, a lot of, not that there's excess, but we're gonna have to really monitor and maybe cut back in some areas. The 911 center, on page 124, we were looking for about 24,000 in cuts. We were able again to make those through the contractual services. On the back, one of those areas was the actual 911 system. We have not been spending via budgets each year for that. So that's one of the areas that we looked at. And if those expenditures are incurred, there again, we'd have to come and ask to amend those budgets. But we feel that was a safe place to make those cuts. Travel and training was also decreased about 12,000 in there. We currently have several positions that are open there, but we feel that those would be hired within the next year. We feel that that's within reach. The fire department on 128. Here again, the recommended cuts through council were very large, 134,000. We were able to make some of those, but we'll have to look at either a shift in service or some other way to make those cuts. We feel that we are looking up into like staffing or into some of those areas. There is an open position right now there, but we have budget-wise removed the battalion chief's salary in there since Chief Robinson was promoted. We thought that was one area that, we could take out of the budget, but we are still looking to make about 134,000 in there. Code enforcement's on page 132. The cuts there were fairly small, 1,917. We were able to, trying to see where we made those those cuts. I think they were in the contractual services, but they were fairly small. On page 136 is the ancillary and nonprofit organizations, where council allocates funds to joint powers boards, nonprofits, several ancillary. And when we go through the formula, we see that there are large variances in what council put out into here. We were looking for cuts of about 12,000. And what I did, is we went through those allocations and they were reduced by 10%. And with the reductions of 10%, we were able to make the recommended cuts. The downtown development amount went to zero, but there is a downtown development department, and it's just moved into that department from here.
I noticed on this nonprofit, like the Carbon County Counseling Center, that's a private business. And if you use that service, like you get a DUI or something and the judge makes you go to that, they charge. And I just don't think we should support a private business. Personally, I think that should be zeroed.
It's not a nonprofit.
It is not a nonprofit, they are for-profit.
Okay.
They do provide sliding scale fees, though.
Well, they might, but
They do.
still for-profit. But I just know most of the people I know that have used that service or have been forced to use that service have had to either have their insurance be billed or they have had to pay for it.
Is there anything that shows what the nonprofits are asking for this year? Normally, they come in, they present to council, say what they're asking for. Some of them might not even be asking for the amount that's kind of proposed. I mean, I would like to see them come in and tell everybody what they're looking for, like they have in the past, and just provide us that information of what they've had done this year too.
Yes, we can arrange for that. The reason that we haven't is I wanted to get through the council's recommendation on the cuts to see what we could offer. And I believe with the balances where they're at, that would be appropriate at this time to have them come in. If council had really deep cuts in there, it would be at the council's discretion whether to have them come in and explain their services, where the funds have gone. So we kind of held off to this point to see what resources were left to be allocated. And obviously there is sufficient here to have them come in, and we can arrange for that for a
Workshop, right, or something. I personally believe we should have them come in here because there might be something in here they might not ask for as much, and they have done that in the past. Who knows what they'll ask for? But at that point in time, we could find out totally because they're contractually bound also, right, to do certain things for the city. And if they haven't done those certain things, then they probably don't need the funding that we're giving them, is my opinion.
Okay, I can arrange for that.
Okay, we can stall that until then, but there are at least two things here that give me super heartburn about even supporting Tom.
Okay, no, I just took a percentage from last year of the cuts and just spread them evenly as a starting point.
Sure.
We will schedule The second reading of the budget is at the June 4th. We can try to schedule this about that time, maybe a little bit before through a work session and have them come in.
Remind me, I think you said at the beginning that this is a balanced budget.
Yes.
Okay.
So I will show you here in the end, after we go through exactly why it's a balanced
Okay.
budget and
That'd be
why I
great.
say that and what we had to do to get there. Okay,
So if we-
I will arrange for that.
Thank you.
Yep. Downtown development is on page 140. Council here recommended cuts of 23,000. And how we accomplish that is that we would keep the project coordinator position frozen for the time being. And we moved the allocation to the downtown department out of the ancillary nonprofits to here, so that you can see that that 50,000 is still included. But the frozen position is more than enough to make up for the budget cuts that were recommended.
With that frozen position, is there something needing done with the contract? Or do we have to,
The contract says that we will fund that position, but if there is economic hardship to the city, that we don't have to
Okay.
fund that.
please?
Are we at a good breaking point?
I'm with you, I was waiting.
Yes, we are.
We'll take about a 15-minute recess.
I'd suggest something because I'm not a sleep.
Oh. You turn blue.
Yeah. Oh, I'm scared every time.
Giving him up.
Oh.
Do you think we could just go through this page and not go through each individual one?
I'm happy to, yeah, because if it's taking.
Because we're gonna be here till midnight.
I'm happy to do that.
And then if people have questions about the combined, be my guest.
No, I'm happy to
Thank you.
go through those quick. I'm here for your guys' pace. And if you want to sped up, I can.
Some of us have a job in
I didn't even see my final thing, I think.
How was your soccer?
It was, yeah, the awards night.
Oh,
was good.
awards night.
Yeah.
Did she get an award?
It was for Caden. He got, I think he got the academic one, but they didn't call his name, so they're gonna check tomorrow to see, because he had I think he had the grade point average for it, so we'll check that. And then he got the, what do they call it? The JV letter. So he got that.
Oh.
So yeah, he was excited. They had a huge improvement on GPA. I can't remember the numbers exactly. It was like 2.7 or 2.8 was their average on GPA, and that was at the beginning, I believe. And at the end, their average was 3.2. And they have a pretty large team, so it was very impressive. So, one of the kids got the MVP for the state.
State?
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
so that was the 3A. That was awesome to see. They all did it. They had a great team, great kids.
Oh, that's great. You're right about the counseling center. And they need that money more than ever because the state took away a lot of money for them to get free counseling on that sliding scale.
Yeah. You know what happens when you take away money from mental health?
Crazy people.
It's never good.
You're gonna need more police officers at that rate. Yeah, so that is vital.
Well, and a lot of times, the Ohana house that they help house some of those people in
Yeah.
is paid for from what we
Yeah,
give.
yeah.
They still have that?
I don't know. That's what it used to be.
I thought I seen that unit or that building up for sale about a month ago or so.
Which,
Maybe they moved. I just,
I know taking that money away for the sliding scales.
and
Now
they
they're
might-
asking people to be on
it would be,
Medicare.
that's why they need
to
to be
get it.
here to talk to us.
yeah.
Yeah. And explain
But
it.
you
Doesn't it,
can't-
don't we
you can't
usually do that after this?
I think
Or is it
usually.
always before? I just can't, I don't remember.
I don't remember.
Or it's during.
As much as you can. I
Just
mean,
like this, Jimmy, I'm happy. I don't know that it'd be a level of detail that you guys want.
well,
We can read.
I think it's different between people. probably.
Usually I can tell by watching that they're like, speed it up
Everybody's glazed over like.
some are digging and some are glazing.
I'm already like a few pages ahead.
So if you do this section and then go to page 175,
What is that?
combined recreational funds, and then go to page 175 for impact and assistance.
Yep.
And then if they want to know details about the recreation, it's, 50 pages. For you to go through.
There's a lot on that.
I'm just trying to help.
Thank you.
Well, I'm good. Usually I can tell how to go.
This is gonna be, and unfortunately, we keep having these meetings late.
I don't want to know.
I think-
Yeah, I'm sure. I haven't been down there for a while.
We don't have this.
There is landfill inside.
Can't go.
Okay, thanks for coming.
Sweet dreams.
That's why we didn't have it earlier. One person check.
Sorry.
Oh, irritated. No, I totally agree. The elections will be interesting. I hope lots of people know.
Marcellus and Adrian's video.
End of this month? Something now, going into this month. Did you put in for re-election?
I have not.
Well, then there's enough to do so, Mr. Gardner.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Some are, nobody cares. No, sure. Thank you. Let's see.
Thank you. Probably need some protein, Tom.
We ran
I don't think they go in far enough, so the insulin gets under my skin and it stays. My blood sugar.
Is
So
So you have to give yourself,
so I use my old pump, and this is my new one, but I have the blood glucose monitor into this one.
oh no.
It won't hook to my other one. I have to carry them both. Then I can monitor.
Have you told them that?
Not yet, because the home supplies for this are $1,200.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
just couldn't go buy a new set, so I use the old set and I'll switch it out.
That's crazy.
This stuff's crazy expensive.
All healthcare is.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
That's it.
I was like, holy cow, Walmart was 500 for the same thing.
Oh, I was paying.
Yeah, so much. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so you ready to go?
I actually know like every motorcycle.
How are you?
Feel full.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not here.
Guess you can plug that. I didn't know we needed it
Thanks,
last time.
thank you.
Last time I didn't
Yeah.
bring it, bring
You
it
can always
again,
count on
we
me
did.
for a bag.
Yeah.
All right, I'll call this meeting, or this workshop back to order. It's 9:24, and Tom, I'll turn the floor back over to you.
All right, thank you, Honorable Mayor. We'll move in real quickly to the recreation departments. They begin on page 145. And I have a section on the revenues, and what I will just say there is that we implemented the rate increases into those that you will see. If you go back to the expenditures, the golf course expenditures is kind of the one area where there's a lot of deviation in what the direction was from council. And if we had to make budget cuts of $156,000 out of there, which is kind of the average of the six, we could not operate the golf course on that. We would be down basically to one staff member as a superintendent. So we are looking there as best as we can to see if we can make further cuts, but we made several of those, but we're still looking at a significant portion of that to come out of the golf course. The clubhouse is kind of the same as that on page 156. The clubhouse has one staff member, which is our golf pro, and then several part-time employees. And for this exercise, the amount of the cuts were included with the golf course in there. So that's an area that we could not reach the recommendations from council.
Can I ask a question? Does anybody here know? There was talk about the changing of the running of several other golf courses in Carbon County. Has any of those changes taken place, or?
Sorry. I believe that the change took place quite a bit last year, and that was at the Saratoga Golf Course. It's not even a municipal golf course. It's a private club, and they did some stuff, and I don't know what all they did, but my understanding, decreased the revenues off of their course because of the way they did stuff, and it actually increased memberships to Rawlins because they're traveling from Saratoga to Rawlins now.
And that took place last year. Okay.
Started last year, more is coming this year, to be honest.
Okay,
I've seen several people I know that were members over there already traveling over.
Okay, I just was curious. Thank you.
Okay, on page 159, you'll see the different recreation grants that we either have secured or looking for in recreation, and they're about $324,000. And you can see down in there what those grants are. On the recreation center itself, under the expenditures, we were looking for 52,000. Here again, there's a lot of deviation in the amounts. We were able to make some of those, but this is an area that we had already reduced the superintendent position at the rec center, as well as a programmer. So we were down 2 positions when we started the budget, but we are still looking for about 52,000 there. Under the shooting range, page 167, we have taken the programmer position from a full-time to a part-time. And there is as a way to save money, so we have cut the hours of operation back. Mostly either in the evenings or on the weekends that it's open. We did that when that position opened up with the hopes that we could get directions whether to hire a full-time programmer or a part-time. And with the overall financial condition, we recommend a part-time position at this time. The last area within the general fund is the green spaces, which is the parks. Here again, the budget cuts were 65,000, which are really, steep cuts within the area. We currently have 1 frozen text position, and we recommend for fiscal year 25 that position remain frozen at this time to help balance the budget. So through the general fund departments, we've kind of touched on all of the different departments and the different areas. And what I would like to show you real quick is if you can flip back to the beginning on page 15 towards the beginning of the book. I'm going to jump around.
Easy for you to say.
I know. Our general fund revenues through sales tax and all of the general revenues are budgeted at $11,754,000. The expenditures that we just went over are $9,400,000. So the net of the general departments that we have is a surplus of $2,354,000. If you look on page 17, you will see the recreation departments that we just went over. Their revenues amount to $419,000. Their expenditures are $1,774,000. And that shows a net transfer of $1,354,000. That would have to come from the general fund departments. So if you go to page 18, what you will see are those numbers that we just had with $1 million added towards capital. And you will see on the top chart for the proposed, and I have 24, it should be 25, is that zeros out. So the revenues equal the expenditures from what we had talked about. What we had to remove out of here are 4 different things to get this to balance. From the exercise that we did in the Balancing Act, we took $1 million out of streets, out of the 2.3. We cut capital from 1.5 million back to $1 million. We took 300,000 for health insurance back out, and we froze 5 positions. And then with the cuts that we made, you could see that that zeroes out, that balances out to the general fund.
How much did you take from streets?
The full $1 million that we had within the Balancing Act that we did, it was set at $1 million. We had to remove that out and prolong the streets program a year, or until we can find those funds.
Tom, you said something about 300,000 for insurance?
Yeah, and I will show you that here.
Okay.
Real quickly.
Okay, you just mentioned it, so I'm like,
In the Balancing Act, we had the premiums set at the amount that we had for 23. We just went back to the premiums. And our intent was to explore health insurance. And with the quotes that we received, we felt that we could cut 300,000 out. But I'll go over that. Staff through the insurance committee wanted to maintain the current insurance. And so we had to basically lower those premiums back to where they were, but that will result probably in a loss in the internal service fund.
and what are we looking at the loss in the internal service fund?
It's in the back. Right now, it all depends on claims, but the way they are trending, we're looking at about 400,000 loss. We have reserves of about 4.5 million. So that'll bring reserves down to about 4.1 or $4 million
And interest lost off of that is?
The interest, is that what you're saying? Right now, that is at a local bank,
Okay, so it's no,
drawing very little.
Very
interest
negligible.
right now.
yeah, okay. I'm just, 300,000 is a lot of money.
It's an awful lot when we're looking at large amounts that we need to cut. It's, yes. And like I said, that's in the back. We'll hit that shortly.
Okay.
Personnel, on page 20, you can see the frozen positions that we had coming into the year. The positions not budgeted in 23. The current year, we have 5 frozen positions that we recommend, and we have taken out funding for 4 positions and 2 half positions, as you can see there on page 20. And all of those cuts are within the numbers that we just looked at that help us balance out. The personnel is also outlined on 21, and page 22 and 23. A quick discussion on the fund reserves. Within the general fund, the reason we bring that up at the budget time is that we do have cash reserves if we wanted to use some of those for a one-time project or purpose in the next year. The current year that we're in, we amended the budget earlier in the year for about 1.7 million for deferred maintenance. if we were to look at a one-time project, either with dilapidated buildings or street projects, or something that council would like, we have in there, if you go back to page 30, we have about 24 million in reserves in the general fund. About 10.3 million of that is in the unassigned category. That's available for expenditure at the council's discretion.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, last night we talked about Edinburgh and how that's only just gonna keep increasing.
Yep.
If I had a preference, that would be my preference to get that project started, and then end up repaying the general fund when we collect the tax.
As those funds come in.
Yeah, that would be
And
my
And
preference.
that would take what,
Three something, yeah.
I've got that in here. Well, it's gonna take 3 years to get
to
there.
pay that back?
Well, yes, it'll take 3 years to raise enough funds for it, so it'll take 3 years to pay.
But it'll
But-
save us money in
Well,
the end
exactly. I
because of
would
inflation.
I would
100%.
think that would be a good deal. And the reason I would be amenable to that is that with 3 million out of this, it still leaves 7 million in reserves. I mean, we're on an interstate, we have a railroad, we have pipelines. We really have to be careful with our reserves. Stuff could happen. And, but if we can take our money that we're getting paid, I mean, even up to 4% interest, which we're not, but if we were getting that, it's still, inflation is still outrunning that. So it would be money well spent, and we would not put ourselves in an unsafe position. I think that's a great idea.
Just to me, it's gonna just keep increasing, and then we're just gonna be kicking the can down the road, and it's just gonna get more and more expensive, and
I agree.
I think it's.
It'll never get done.
This
It'll never get done.
this project's been on the higher priority list to get done, and with the amount that you see that increased in what was said last night, in a year it increased 2 million almost, or whatever it was. And so with that increase, if we're waiting 3 more years, we're looking at possibly 5 million increase to more, right? I think we could save that kind of money by just taking this money out of the reserves right now, agree to 100%, get it done, and we'll just put that money back in when the fund's there.
Yeah.
As we collect it.
Okay, yep. Oh, I think that's great. Okay, on page 35, I'm sorry.
Sorry. On the personnel side, I don't, and you guys might have talked about this already. Was there, have we gone over wages yet? Or is
We
that
haven't.
later? Okay, I'll just wait then.
Okay. Yep. On page 35 is just a preliminary. We have not nailed this down for capital yet. And what is on here adds up to 1.3, and we only have 1 million available. So I will work with department heads to get that to you for a recommendation by the second reading, knowing that it'll be capped at $1 million. A couple of the projects on here that I would want to mention is, of interest, is the Rawlins will be hosting a Little League tournament. I forget which year, I think it's next summer.
Next year.
25.
Yeah.
Yeah, next year, and the VFW fields are in need of a lot of repairs. So we have in here 100,000 for asphalt, for like an overlay, where it is actually coming up in chunks. And then the ask was for 300,000 for building renovation, for the crow's nest, concession stand, bathrooms. I have that cut back a lot from there to about 100,000 as a recommendation to start on that, but we will come up with better numbers on that as we as we get closer, but we feel some immediate attention is definitely warranted.
Is
Is
it
it
a full
100,000
renovation or
a full like build? Because 100,000 for what is there currently, right? Seems like a lot to renovate. I would almost think that 100 or 300,000, what they asked for, is a
Yeah.
brand new build of everything.
I thought that was like a brand new build, and I think 100,000 would be a start or
I-
a real good.
I think 100,000 would get a decent building and a Cadillac compared to what they have now, for
Yeah.
dang
Correct.
sure, right?
Is that the
I think it'd be
bathrooms
a,
too, or just
Yeah,
the-
bathrooms are
Oh, yeah.
definitely on that list, crow's
Oh.
nest.
The bathrooms make more sense.
dugout
yeah, everything's
repairs.
there though, plumbing wise and all that. So I think, I mean, we might be running into higher at 100,000. We might have to try and amend something if we say we want to go that route. But I
Yeah.
think when you're talking to bringing in a Little League tournament of such, you want facilities like that for, you know, what we have and to try and attract them back
It has
again.
to look good, but it doesn't have to be gold
Yeah.
plated.
Correct. It needs to be functional.
Yeah.
Councilman Garner?
Have they looked at not running any asphalt and just going with the dirt overlay, nice compact, and then,
I don't know, we just had talked asphalt.
okay.
The asphalt in there now is coming up in chunks.
Yeah,
It's
huge chunks.
a trip hazard, really bad. We have to do something.
And
Is-
ADA would be an issue, I would think,
Yeah,
both if you didn't asphalt it.
What is the current, the fields right across from the rec center, isn't that?
It's
all-
asphalt.
Is it asphalt?
Yes,
there?
It
It's
is
been a long
asphalt,
time.
yeah.
Well,
That's-
and with our winds,
Mm-hmm.
the dust is
Especially on the
a
ball
huge
fields.
issue.
Yeah,
Especially
housing
down
right
in
there
town.
and.
We've learned to squint, but they haven't yet.
Is the driving range lighting? Oh man, is that like just to put in full lights?
lights on the driving range. And that was recommended, and I just, like I said, we have to cut 300 off of here,
I'd cut
and there
that.
might be some more added, you know, that we'll have to cut something else, but
And the simulator's 100?
that's for
Is that the one with the
additional
grant?
room onto the pro shop for the simulator to go into.
I thought we had the room.
That's proposed to go into a dining room, which we lease.
Oh.
So then the proposal is to now take it maybe to a racquetball court in the rec center. So my opinion there is we've already allocated the money to a simulator, right? And if you're trying to attract individuals to an area, you put it at the area you want to attract them to. So that's no matter where you're at, what you're doing.
Well, that
But-
just sounds a lot like that lean-to for recycling, and pretty soon they got a full-blown building with the hole in the floor and a $169,000 compactor, and, I didn't realize when we talked about that simulator, it was gonna be an additional,
Room.
I don't think it was never thought of that way until we controlled the restaurant at that point in time, and now we don't control that restaurant as much as, you know, we lease that out. So when you're leasing a space out, I think we don't need to be putting and taking that space away.
Councilman Garner.
I love video games, but $100,000 for a game, that'd be the first thing I'd get rid of. Just if, because, and the driving range lights, those are hard to swallow when we're talking about this much to cut.
Yeah.
Cutting jobs.
How much do they play after dark out there? The big lights on, because we're in the summertime, we're like till 10:30 at night.
We are in the summer.
Yeah,
That's right.
when they should be golfing, so.
Yeah.
Don't do much golfing in the winter.
We don't use the balls and.
Hey, I'll take that into mind.
I would like to see the advisory boards get more involved and when I say more involved, I don't mean as far as like, come to us saying, we need this money for this, right? Let's come up with some ideas and proposals, you know, as an advisory board to increase some revenues there, which they have come up with that as far as like a simulator, right, to try and increase the revenues. They've come up with having a tournament on their own, right? Last year, I think they did the first one, stuff like that. But I know that they could look at grants. Any advisory board could look at grants. A shooting range, they get grants all the time, right? So I think we could push into that area, but everybody knows I'm a proponent of that, but I would cut driving range lights for sure. But as far as a addition to that, I think it's needed, and to put a simulator in. It's not $100,000 video game as much as what is thought of. It's a revenue increase, I believe.
Well, I can tell you with the advisory boards, like the shooting range advisory board, if you go out to the shooting range, they're the guys pushing the wheelbarrows with the shovel in their hand, digging the holes, stacking the bricks, building the things. And some advisory boards think they come here and just tell us all the things they want to buy. And it's a huge difference. And the shooting range advisory board is a shining example of what an advisory board should be, really. They put on 11 tournaments a year. I can't remember all, but it was amazing all that they do. And like with the golf, I just got to tell you, the simulator and the building and the lights, and we have frozen positions, and we have needs that those people provide, streets, safety, all of those things. To me, that's a no contest contest.
Okay. That's good. Thank you for the input. Okay, real quick then, I think
Sorry.
we can,
You can say whatever. I don't have to agree. We can argue it and say whatever we want to say.
Well,
Right?
I
If you're
just-
arguing a frozen position, that's fine. Argue a frozen position to say, you know, cut that. I understand what you're saying. I wasn't asking that. If we're gonna argue a frozen position, we've done the whole year without those positions already. So in my opinion, maybe they shouldn't be frozen, they should be cut. So, and I'm not trying to be rude and mean, but I get both sides, right? I'm not,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you knew something else
Sure.
that was on there about crack sealing of the asphalt, if we had that kind of stuff, if you knew if we had that stuff in our own.
You know, I don't know if we have that equipment. Do you, Tom?
I don't know, Cody.
Seems like they left.
I know that we used to pay this company, when we had money, $1 million a year to do a seal coat. And it was put out there $1 million a year, and they went through the town one place at a time and made them look really, really good and kept our streets in good shape. But I think we paid a contractor to do
To
that.
do all that?
To do that, for
No,
sure.
no, the wear coursing we
Yeah,
did.
The workhorse.
And I don't know about the crack sealing and all of that. I don't know.
I didn't know if we had that equipment, right? I'm just thinking, if we have the equipment, is this money for materials, right? Is more so than anything. And the bad part is, we own equipment we can't use because we don't have the personnel or manpower to push through it on, right? But at the same time, we keep purchasing equipment that takes manpower to do, and the jobs aren't gonna get done. So,
Well, I'll look in and see if we have that.
It's a balance.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
What was the last thing?
on page 175, we'll go over real quick the impact assistance fund that we have. If you look at page 176, in fiscal year '23, we didn't receive any impact assistance funds whatsoever. So we didn't know exactly how to budget or to move forward. We have received to date this year about $918,000. And you can see it's through Choke Cherry, Rock Creek, Transwest. If you take those percentage-wise per month and just move those into next year, we should get about 1.1 million. I will get more information on those, but I believe that the impact assistance will come in pretty well the next few years. And so with that, the 1.1 million in expenditure for 25 is carryover items from the year before. That leaves us about $2.5 million in impact assistance funds that we can allocate towards the impact of these projects to our community.
Some of those are only directed towards safety, right? Like police and fire, is that?
Choke Cherry, as I understand, can be used for anything general fund plus like infrastructure for water.
Okay.
But Rock Creek Transwest will have different requirements placed on it.
Can we get those?
And it's a
actual-
difference of timing. The smaller ones or the later ones that are more specific. But so that the legislature doesn't tighten the noose, we should be very cognizant of the fact that those are impact funds, and they should be buying or paying for things that have been an impact to us. Does that make sense?
That's correct.
So that we
Yeah.
don't, when we go back and, because it's a struggle every time.
Well, when I just see that, like, there was, what page was that? We were just on 20.
And this money could actually go towards that Inverness project also.
Correct.
Because it is one-time money, it's a one-time project,
Yep.
and that would speed that up without reducing our reserves, and then we could move on to something else.
Correct. I'll look into that because, yeah, it makes sense.
Isn't there something on Inverness that we're doing sewer and water separate from what the original deal was, the 650 was, that the city's got to pay for?
There was some water and sewer, if I remember right, down on the private part of that we are doing a little different, or that we're still working with the
I
project.
kind of understood that it wasn't figured in 650 and that we was going to go ahead and do it while we're there, something to do with water and
I'll
sewer.
look into that.
I think
That was discussed
Yeah, something-
about doing sewer water and stormwater through that area. It cannot be an upgrade, is
Yeah.
the way the ballots
Yeah,
reads.
So they, the way I understood, they was looking into what it cost us to do it
Yep. I
while we're
think
doing it.
we could use these funds for that.
Yeah.
as an
Very
upgrade.
similar to Walnut Street where
Mhm.
they didn't figure in the new sewer, and the sewer was 70 years old,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it'd be
Yeah,
crazy to
turn
do
it
a
up,
street
not-
without replacing all that.
Yep.
Okay, so on 176 is the current year. If you go to 177 through 181, what I have here is the cash balances that remain from all the different impact assistance, TB flats, for instance, Gateway West that we had, and all of these have different requirements, but you can see what we purchased out of there and what remains in all those issues to come up with the amount of the balance of cash that we have. The one thing that I would bring attention to was on page 181. There is a miscellaneous section of this that had some property sales like 10 years ago that have remained in this fund. And I believe that those funds could be used as the council sees fit without restrictions of impact assistance. That they were just placed into this fund years and years ago. And I'm not exactly sure what a lot of those were, but they've been in there for several years. And I believe the impact assistance miscellaneous, I think, was property sales back like 10, 15 years ago. So we've got about $201,000 there that could go about any direction that council would like out of that fund. So with that, that concludes the general fund. And I just want to touch on these others briefly. The rest of these, because we have been through these a lot through the rate studies that we've had. And everything else now ties back to those rate studies that you've heard several times. Capital projects funds is the 6 penny. If you look at page 184, you will see that we're expecting about $1,375,000 next year with some interest. So what we would have basically at the end of that of 25 is about $5.9 million available in impact or in 6 penny. You turn to page 185, this is just what was on the 6 penny ballot. And the estimate that I got today on Edinburgh was just over $7 million. Like 7.2 million through the contractors. So we are about 3 years off if we were to wait for those funds to accumulate.
Or longer.
I believe that if we put some funding to it, that we can contract this year, be ready to go on the first thing next year.
Yes.
Agreed.
That should happen.
Yeah, and then on page 186 and 187, we had previous issues of 6 penny funds that are not for this ballot previous. And we did not spend all those out for some reason. And these go back several years. So there's 42,000 in one of those issues, and there's 28,000 in a previous issue. What we are looking for those funds is curb and gutter in the downtown area.
Well, now, Tom, when those specific purpose taxes are voted on and done, and there's an excess, it's my impression, and I could be wrong, but I've always been told that money can go to maintenance of what was on the ballot,
Yes.
Yes,
not anything else.
yes, but when we look, we believe that the curb and gutter downtown would fit that.
Okay, okay,
Oh, good.
We had looked at that, but we will make sure of that.
okay, I just don't want to get in trouble that way.
Yeah, because it was infrastructure, 6 penny projects that they were for. But we would definitely look into that before we make a recommendation.
For that last night. Wasn't it last night? He was
Yes.
mentioning a grant or something for curb and gutter on
He's
that.
working on a grant or something.
Yeah.
Sure, it's gonna cost more than what they have right there, though.
Yeah, because this isn't gonna get far on the curb and gutter.
And this could be a match for the grant,
It
but,
could be a match for
Okay.
the grant.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just
We will
wanna,
make sure that it fits.
okay.
I don't think it would cover how much money they need.
Okay.
that stuff's expensive. It's ridiculous.
Real quickly, we have 4 different enterprise funds, as you know. The water fund, with the increase in the rates that we have. If you go back to page 193, I took these amounts right out of the rate study. So with the increase in rates, you've got all the different projects there. You can see that the revenues equal the expenditures for 25 budget-wise. On page 192 are all of the projects and capital that we are looking at. The 4 infrastructure projects relate to the lead and copper rule, and we do not know what the federal government will fund us yet for lead and copper. So we have budgeted grants of 500,000 and projects of about 2 million there. And then you'll just see how that balances. The one thing that I would point out that's interesting on 193 down in the graph is that overall capital now is about 50% of our budget in the water fund. So that goes back to the infrastructure that we have. The next few pages are the
I was just gonna ask the capital summary on that for 2025. Is that more so towards like funded depreciation in a way, where you're talking 15,000 to this, 15,000 to that?
yeah.
Because you
it's-
dang sure ain't getting a truck for 15,000 unless it's off the used car
Yeah,
lot.
you ain't gonna buy a backhoe for
And you're-
15,000.
Yeah, that's why I just want to make sure we're,
Correct.
okay, so we're already working
If you go
towards
through
that.
the years, yes, you're gonna see those
Yeah.
Okay,
for the next like 10
Yeah.
years.
thank you,
Okay,
thank
okay,
you.
they ain't buying it next year.
I just wanted to, make sure we're on track, or that's what it's about, so, thank you.
Okay. The next pages up through about 201 are just the water fund departments and their expenses. I could let you review that at your own time. Page 202. What I'd like to point out here is that we currently have 4 different grants on the water line or for water infrastructure that we need to budget into next year to be spent within the budget. And then I have the priority 1 projects there, and then on page 203 are the priority 2 projects. I can tell you that the master water study that is happening is where I got these estimates a few months ago. The estimate in here is 42 million. I can tell you right now that those estimates are now over 52 million in those things as more information becomes available. Page 204, you can just see those total 3.2 million within the budget.
I'm sorry, Tom, when will that master study be done?
Probably by the middle of June.
Okay.
It's soon.
Okay.
Yep. Page 205 is the sewer fund. Here again, this goes right out of the rate study that we had, these numbers. And it is a balanced budget cash-wise, but we had to cut back on the amount of capital because we just didn't feel that we could support the rates to support all the capital that we had planned. But this will start those projects. We will be able to do 1 or 2 of those projects and get the sewer on its way projects. So that's kind of the sewer fund. The landfill fund, the one thing that I do not have in here that, talking with Mr. Lascano at the landfill, is he would like to look into a loader on a lease, like he has with the compactor and the scraper. I know that the loaders there are really aged, and he said it takes a gallon of oil about every time that they use them, that it's really burning. So we will look into that to make sure that that's in here. One of the other things that we are looking for in there is if there are sufficient reserves to make some repairs to the MSW building, maybe look at the opportunity of doors if they are within the cash reserves. We have about $1 million of cash reserves in there, but we need to take into account funded depreciation, a lot of different things. But we are looking to see if there is sufficient reserves for some of those improvements as council would see necessary.
Some of what worries me about the doors is when you have 200 people a day going in and out of garage doors, their lifespan is fairly short.
Me and Lou discussed that today. I was with Lou talking about it today. And basically, they're going to have openers on it that they can open up and leave open as long as people are coming and going, just leave them open. And then, like in the wintertime when it's slow days and all that, they can keep them closed and just open them when they come in because they're all push button to open them. But we are going to have to go to cameras out there so we can watch everything.
Yeah, and
Because
like I
you've
said,
got to keep track of everything.
we have some reserves, and as you can see in here, we are budgeted as an excess. If we recommend a loader lease, though, it will eat that excess up. We'd be looking at reserves out of the landfill, and there is cash reserves there.
Councilman Weisenberg.
One thing I think we need to look at also is the future of Rawlins, as it's going to be here a long time, and there is some land around there that could possibly be used. And I understand we don't, MSW is going to be transferred out, right? Unless something else changes, and we have the vertical expansion that's going to last us, 25 years, I believe is what they projected or whatever. But I think we need to start looking now to the future also and maybe see what we could do. And if we have a little bit of excess reserves, maybe kind of expand that out and set the future of Rawlins up.
You know, it was 15 years ago that Mr. Gonzalez and I, he was a councilman in Hannah, worked our tail off and tried to get a regional landfill here in Rawlins instead of making jobs in Natrona County. And I was a commissioner, he was a councilman, and we ran into, you know, it's none of your business in almost every community. And part of the problem was because it was going to take 5 years to do the study, and it was going to cost $5 million for the liner. That was 15 years ago, and we've spent that on hauling the stuff. The other thing about that is these landfills do, and this is a question that we could research tomorrow, these landfills like in Casper and whatnot, they charge us more for unbaled trash, and I don't know what the difference is, if it is 50 cents a whatever, or is it 500 or whatever? How long would it take to pay for a baler? And with a baler, that would also help eliminate the raven problem. The trash wouldn't be just laying in there, it would be baled and a lot more inaccessible to the ravens. So it might help cure two problems, but we had a baler at one time, and long story, I'm not gonna get into it, but they do charge less for baled trash. I'd like to know how much less, and
What does it cost for a baler?
just simple math to figure out how long would it take to pay for a baler.
Okay, no,
Okay.
that's very good. Okay, the last enterprise fund, real quick, is the recycling. We had a $3 increase in that a couple of years ago, and recycling fund, we are budgeting, I guess I don't have it here, it's about a $60,000 surplus in there. And we will look at those reserves as to why they are building and why the rate was set there. And we will get back, because that should be a break-even fund. And I think we are accumulating some cash reserves in it, so.
Councilman Weisenberg.
I think a lot of the increase was proposed because they needed a new forklift for one, And then I believe they were looking at more recycle bins, but now we've taken that away from the community. And at this point in time, I understand that they have to go through that and deal with a lot of garbage like that, but I have had multiple people complaining about the accessibility of that. And I do understand that they opened on a Monday instead of being closed to the public, you know, so they could do all that. But individuals have come to me asking about, you know, getting those bins back out. And I know I had talked about maybe taking
Cameras, yeah.
do cameras. We could do that, but I know I had mentioned like last year maybe taking a chunk of the fire station 2 next to the fire station where we could have cameras and accessible, and putting some bins over there for the residents of Southside. But that was some of the increases to allow this stuff to happen, and we increased this and took services away.
But I will tell you, cameras are very expensive to install and maintain, and when you have a problem, now you're paying somebody to sit and stare at a screen for hours. Sounds good, but having a car wash and some really good cameras, I have a little experience at that, and it can be very time consuming too.
Well, some of, they've got dummy ones out there, people don't know, but a lot of people just think they're on camera and they don't do stuff. I mean,
Yeah, but a lot of people don't care, man.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
they,
no,
they
there's still ones
abuse
that
that
care.
like no others out
I know.
there.
What-
It's horrible.
They're gonna do it no matter what, yeah.
What, I mean, Rick's back there. What, have you all been, and it sounds like you guys have been involved quite a bit with some garbage and stuff dropped off down there, correct? In the police department?
Yeah, we have taken calls down there on
Has there been citations issued?
it. If we can identify who dumped it off, that's the key. And that's not always the case.
So,
I
but,
couldn't tell you without looking it up whether you cited it or not.
okay,
I mean, that's something that, I'm not gonna look at our records.
Yes.
Dive into that.
I just wonder sometimes if that's like, if it happens, it scares people away, you know, to stop doing that kind of stuff because they know it's a serious offense, you know?
I had a dumpster right beside my car wash, and one day I drove up and there's a left side, right side, front, back, and top of a camper, and 2 mattresses, and, I mean, every weekend, and then I finally, had a dumpster that had a padlock on it, and then they would pile it on it. I mean, it's not the good old days, sorry.
No, well, in Laramie, all their dumpsters are locked.
And I understand. I just think if we're gonna charge for a service, we gotta provide that service is where I'm at with this too.
I understand that too, but everybody has to go to the grocery store of some sort. And that's on its way to, from the other end of town or whatever. The recycling center is on the way to the places you buy groceries, so I don't
If you
know.
work
Are the
with
numbers
people,
up
it's hard.
or down? That's,
I know that Lou has said during the meeting, they are up, the recycling numbers are up, even though they've taken the bins away, but the numbers are up for recycling because they opened up an additional day. Now, when he gave that information, it was in the last couple months, so it's pretty recent information.
It's just a tough deal, people,
The problem is, it only takes a couple people to abuse it and then ruin it for everyone,
you know,
so.
and it's been several times. Tough
Okay,
deal.
all right, we're near the end.
The end is near.
The end is in sight. The last fund that I want to go over with you is our internal service fund, which is our self-insurance, health insurance for employees. Now, we've had a lot of activity here, and I formed an insurance committee, and we really looked at this hard. We are currently purely self-insured, so whatever claims come in, the city pays those claims, as well as third-party administrator, stop-loss insurance, consulting, and all those different things. Being self-insured, that's what we pay. And the last 4 or 5 years, not including this year, we have come out ahead in the insurance, that we've had more premiums paid by employees to the fund than we've had claims. And on page 232, the last page, you can see the change in net position has gone up roughly in the last 4 years about $1 million. So we came out ahead on that game. That's kind of where you'd want to be. But in the current year that we're in, as of the end of March, we'd already lost about $325,000. So claims have jumped this last year. And I feel, looking at the workforce, kind of the demographics, I think that it will continue to increase, these claims. The other aspect to look at is when the first year that I was here, the amount that we paid from the general fund, enterprise funds into the self-insurance fund, if you look at the bottom of page 230, premiums over the past 3 years, you can see the amounts that we basically charged the general fund and other funds for insurance coverage. Now, I feel that for family coverage, $31,428, that number is very high, and we cover that for all the employees, so that the employees do not make any payroll deduction towards their insurance. So if they sign up for insurance, it is fully covered. We do not charge them a premium. So when I looked at the 31,000, I knew that there are other options out there that are a lot less. And the surpluses that we've had over the last few years have been a result of really high premiums being paid into the fund. And so they are higher than the claims, and we have been able to build that up. So I felt over time that the premiums should be able to come down, that they shouldn't be as high as they are. So I got a quote this last year from a trust that has about 70 groups involved in it. And so I went out, and you can see, you can see on page 231 what those premiums were. So for a $2,500 deductible, they were $27,000. For $1,500, it was $29,000, and we were at about $31,000. So I felt there was some savings there to be had. And I also felt, getting out of the self-insurance, we could protect our investment a little bit more if we had years of high claims that we would have to pay. And I also felt that introducing health savings accounts, a defined benefit plan, I felt that those would be really beneficial to staff, because they are tax exempt, they help with taxes, and I felt a lot. So I formed, through the department heads, an insurance committee, and I presented the information to them. And the result of that committee is they want to stay where we're at and just keep it, right there. And I think the main driving force was we have $1,000 deductible versus 1,500, or those others. Now, I like the idea of offering a high deductible plan so that health savings accounts are available. The insurance committee did not look upon that as a valid option, so they recommended that we stayed. And so I had to, we lowered the premium back to where it was this last year, to help balance the overall general fund budget. But as a result, and this is a judgment call, as a result, on page 227, if our claims continue up where they're at, we would lose about $400,000 out of that internal service fund. And those reserves are up over $4 million. Can it sustain that in the current year? Yes. But I feel there would be substantial savings and opportunities if we were to go with a high deductible plan. I felt that with the $4 million invested at 5% is about $200,000 a year. We could put that into an HSA for employees, and at 100 plans, that would be about $2,000 that would go into an HSA that could be used as they see fit, or it could be carried over. And they can also add to it. And a lot of these HSAs, once you hit 59.5, can be turned into a 401k to help you with retirement. But I know that staff felt, number one, that the lower deductible is what their priority was, to where it would go from 1,000, either 1,500 or to 2,500. They wanted that $1,000 deductible. That's kind of their overall vote on it. And HSAs and the defined benefits and everything really wasn't within the discussion that they wanted to pursue.
Did we find out if we could use that $4 million to offset the deductible amount? Because when we last talked about it, if doing the math correctly, it doesn't seem like we'd run out of that $4 million fast if we covered, if it was 1,500 or 1,000 here and now it's 1,500, we cover 500 out of it. That's a wash for them. And if we could use that money,
yes.
Can we use
Yes.
it that way?
Yeah, because if it's in there, it could be used for anything health insurance benefit related. And so what the proposal was is along your lines is the interest income off of that, instead of helping with the premium, we would put it into an HSA for them. And so it's almost what,
It would just be a
close
wash.
to what you're saying, but, and then we could also, out of the general fund with those reductions, still offer it fully covered, but it would have a $3,500 deductible versus $1,000, but you would have money in an HSA. Where the downside is if a second person within your family has to reach the deductible, you're looking at $3,500, if that were the case. But you kind of have to weigh out where the benefits are, the risk, and where you want to invest your funds, and staff wanted to stay where we are.
Tom, stop loss is set at what, right now at self-insurance?
It's like 50,000.
50?
50.
50,000 per incident, right?
As I recall, yes.
Okay, so that's on per incident there.
Yeah, and we've hit that this year, I think, 3 different times, maybe
And that's,
4.
so that's 4 times, that's $200,000 right there on just 4 different occasions already, and we're looking at more
And we've
coming in,
got,
so.
we've got 2 different cases that have been lasered with that, to where we actually have to pay more because it's a guarantee next year they're gonna hit the stop loss.
So-
We have to pick that up.
So now you're also saying that, that 4.5 or that's already there in the insurance fund right now, you're talking about that interest that would be made is at a different investment, correct?
It'd go into either WildStar or to the widget funds that we just set up.
And what's it projected off of 4.5 to, on interest at, you know, 450,000 a year or so, 45,000?
I believe
To there.
that at 4 million at 5%, I think we worked out to 200,000.
So if we're at 200,000, like Councilman Gardner said, it's a wash, right? Right now at that, and we could invest that into their HSA, and we could possibly, because I think I'm not 100% sure what the law allows, but I think it's upwards of 10,000, 8 to 12, 8 to 12,000. I want to say that is allowed into an HSA a year. So even if we put 7,000 of that right into there, we're still going to be money ahead, and yeah, in the long run, and their premiums are still paid for by the city.
Correct.
Their
It's still full
their
coverage.
deductibles are covered by the city at that time too, because it'd be that much put into an HSA. So
Correct.
I think
The
the
real savings-
understanding is not there of how an HSA could be utilized further in life, and they still have a max out of pocket with a private industry, you know, insurance that they're going to be able to cover off of the money given already.
Yes.
So I honestly think we need to really look into this and pursue this.
I could tell you that Debbie, a long time ago, set up the self-insurance for the county. And when that happened, it was in, early 80s maybe, it was saving the county $500,000 a year or whatever. By the time I left, the self-insurance was getting very scary because it isn't the number of people in the pool, it's the wellness of the people in the pool. And hopefully the city will maintain employees longer, then they're getting older, then the odds of having these, hitting the maximums and these lasers and that sort of thing goes up drastically. And it could end up with nobody having insurance or paying $5,000 a month each or whatever. And personally, the self-insurance thing just scares me to death. It really does.
It does me
Because
as well.
it's open-ended, where if you go buy your insurance, you're on the open market, but if you're self-funded, it don't take too many cancer cases or one transplant or whatever
Well,
to sink the boat.
If you Flight for Life out here, it's $50,000 or better
Right.
for just a Flight for Life out here.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Well, I would accept any recommendation from council. We just have the budget written and, from the staff recommendation.
I'd like to think about it, but I think we all ought to consider going to, away from the self-funded. It's just risky as ever to me.
I think we
If
should.
it's all right with council, I will drop a recommendation on that for the next council meeting. Because we would have to make that change quickly because our plan is up July 31st. And I know that this insurance can get us on by then We just have to sign up, get it through council to recommendation, and then enroll people. How that looks, we could give two different options, HSA, non-HSA plan, a richer plan, or we could look into putting money into their HSA for them, which I feel is a huge benefit. It's tax exempt and you have cash if you have medical. It's just how much are you going to incur? When that runs out, you are on your own. The one other real benefit with the WEBT insurance was that the maximum out-of-pocket is a lot less than our current plan. But the deductibles are higher. But the maximum out-of-pocket are thousands less.
It's hard to know without a crystal ball, but there's a lot more to lose as a self-funded situation for the city.
Yes.
And as the city loses, the premiums have to go up.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think we're there. I really do. And if our claims are what we project, if they're the same as this year, 400,000 is a big price tag to stay where we're at.
it's, yeah.
But if the claims go down, then we could be back to where we're putting money back into reserves again. It's, I like the trust. There's several members of that within our area. Carbon County School District here is on it. Our school district, the city of Green River, is on it, and they have given very good recommendation on it. I personally, just for transparency, I have taken 2 school districts to this same plan, and it was very good in both situations. It was just a seamless transition, and staff have been very happy with it. But that's just kind of where we're at. But
So taking those two wept in the past that you've done, what was your savings in the end of that also?
so what I have found out personally is the insurance that both those school districts had offered deductibles that were upwards of $15,000 or higher, and we saved tremendously with the switch. And you also have insurance that you could use. Pulling people that I know here, their deductibles right now are upwards of $15,000, and they get the HSA and they dump a lot of money into there. That's kind of the overall approach. But what we have is very good insurance. I'm not saying that you have to get away, it's bad. It's just expensive what we have. It just costs the city a lot, and it also costs the opportunity of an HSA and lots of other things.
The HSA is, if you can put $10,000 a year in it, that's $2,800 more dollars if you're on a normal income tax bracket, 28% or whatever. And I know we used to do that when Deb worked at the hospital, and it saved us a lot of income tax.
Yeah.
Basically a retirement plan too, because especially for the younger people, because where they ain't using a bunch of it, it just keeps building and building. So,
Right.
and stuff. So yeah.
Yep. So I will drop a recommendation for council at the next meeting to make that, and I can let them know of our intention.
I don't want to scare the employees, but the county went through that same thing, and at one point in time, we had people that shouldn't have been on the county plan, like the senior centers and the libraries, and I can't remember who all, but we couldn't kick everybody off. We were about to not be able to afford to have insurance for our employees, so we had to start removing people that should never have been allowed on there to start with. But we couldn't remove everybody because we could only change by a certain percentage, or it would get rid of certain grandfather deals, and I can't explain it. Gwen Bartlett could, but it was like World War III. But at the end of 2 years, we give them 2 years notice, and at the end of 2 years, everybody was happy again because they had their own customized plan for their size organization that worked well.
Yep.
So
Are
it's
we ready
scary,
to vote?
but
We need to vote again, correct?
Yep.
Yes. Yes, because this is.
I'm afraid to again.
Do we need to amend the first motion made for the changes recommended?
No,
Or
I will.
You're just gonna do
We'll
it?
do that in a second.
The first reading is just where it's at. You will have a
Okay.
second reading and a third reading.
Okay, so you're just gonna make the changes?
And
Okay.
I know Lynn's got notes as to what changes. And then I will bring a recommendation Tuesday on the insurance, and we'll get that into the budget at that point. So what you'll see on the second reading will be a, where it was at the first reading and what has changed as you go across. And then on the third and final reading, I will put together the budget message and the other supplementary information that goes in the budget.
All right.
That's not in here currently, not like a budget message and the things that really, there should be, these are just the numbers. We will put that in on the third and final reading.
Thank you.
Is this the end of this?
Yes, I'm through.
Okay, we didn't talk about the wages,
Oh, about salaries.
salaries.
Yeah, so I feel from my viewpoint, a couple things salaries. I looked at our salary schedule, via pay grades, and there's a lot of improvements need to be made to that. And I think that's putting it kindly. There's a lot of improvements that it just isn't structured very well. And second of all, when you compare our salaries to other towns, I have a salary study performed by the City Managers Association. We are hourly double-digit behind most positions in our city compared to the municipal average. And I can share that with council, that salary study compared to ours. My hope was through the budget process, through the exercise that we did, is I was hoping to be able to make the cuts and find about $500,000 to work towards that, to fix that, or to at least get a foundation to fix it. But where we're at financially in here, I just can't pull the resources from anywhere to do that. In fact, we are prolonging the streets, infrastructure and capital and freezing positions. In order for us to be competitive, at least in the positions that you would compete with other towns, which would be department heads, upwards of police officers and those things, significant changes need to be made.
Okay.
In that, that's just how I feel. But I don't see a way to do that right now with the situation. And we need to get our overall general fund budget back down from the 13, 14 million to about 10, 11, and then we can look at that.
Would getting those lower positions filled, the ones that we're missing, and so we have this extreme overtime in the other positions. If we filled those positions, do you think that would help reduce that budget or that cost in those departments?
Well, overtime is set at time and a half. The reason it's set at the half is because on those wages above 40 hours, there are no benefits like health insurance and those things added to it. And so the Fair Labor Standards Board said, hey, you have to pay that half premium, and that's what that basically is. So if you moved from overtime to a position with health insurance, theoretically, that should be a wash. I mean, not like added the overtime,
Right.
because on the other position, you would be paying those benefits out. But, so it is kind of a wash, but I think that half the 50% is gonna be higher than the benefits that they have. So I would say yes, that would come down a little bit, the overall cost, if we could hire them versus the overtime.
Just a quick question on that. When you mentioned you've checked with other municipalities and everything, are their benefit packages equally, or are they paying their premiums, or how's that working? Because if we're paying a premium, we are compensating an hourly wage with their benefits. And that could be quite a bit of wage, hourly wise.
I can tell you now, at the amount that we pay for family coverage, there are positions in our city that gets more in benefits than they do in salary. I mean, it is more in health insurance than that. My experience through school districts, cities, hospital, where I've been, we pay more towards benefits than anywhere I've ever been, by far, with covering the whole premium of the insurance. It's a huge cost, $31,000 that we paid for a family premium, and it is to ourselves, you know, into that fund. But I don't know, I don't think you would find too many organizations, for that matter, that cover the full benefit like
Not
this.
anymore.
I just don't think it exists.
I don't think there's any.
I think we're really fortunate, and I believe myself that we are compensating employees now through benefits, not through compensation. And to me, that's one of the cardinal sins of compensation, is paying them through benefits. It should be on the salary side, and benefits should be benefits. So our salaries are, compared to other places, lower, but our benefits are, they're about the best I've seen.
Can you bring us a better snapshot of that at the next reading, Tom?
Yeah, I can see what I can find on that.
Okay. Councilman Garner?
Just the reason I was bringing it up is just, I was thinking if we can save that 300,000 in the insurance and we can move that to pay and get an increase within the biggest benefit out of that, and I know it doesn't help our budget, but it helps our morale, and it helps the fact that we have workers that are working round the clock and hitting huge overtime because we don't have staff to help out, and we got departments that are low in staff. And if we could, one of the things that I think the reason we have that is we're not competitive in wage. And if that bottom end was competitive, then that alleviates so much stress all the way from the bottom to the top. And it doesn't help the budget, but eventually I think it will, and it will, it'll be less errors in the field, when you're doing repairs. If you got a rested team coming out, you have less incident or less mistakes that could be possibly made.
Yeah, I know though, talking to staff through the insurance committee, how they felt was, because I mentioned that, I said I would go to council and try to put the 300 in savings into salaries. And the overriding opinion of the insurance committee is they still wanted those lower deductibles over that. And I tried to explain that if you add it to the base, it increases the Wyoming retirement base, and the amount at retirement will go up because you're 3,000 or I don't know how far ahead. But they still like the idea of the lower deductibles. And that was that committee, and I asked them to ask around the departments, and every department came back, we want to keep the insurance. And so that was just my recommendation tonight through here. But
Okay.
I think these other changes that we've talked about over time would be really beneficial to staff. Maybe a education's, session on just exactly the impact might be what is needed, so.
Okay, I will entertain a motion.
No, sorry, been made.
Already on the table.
Here.
What's that?
We just have to vote.
We already have, Councilmember Eisenberg made the first, and Councilmember Seeloff seconded the motion about the reading of the ordinance.
To accept it?
Yes.
Okay.
So we just need to vote.
All right, so all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign.
I'm gonna abstain since I missed 140 pages of the discussion. So.
Okay, so you'd like to abstain?
Thank you for some light reading tonight.
Yeah.
All right, motion carries, thank you all, and thank you, Tom, for all your hard work, I appreciate it. And,
I'm gonna watch you.
we'll figure it out.
We're good.
You'll want to follow through with
You'll
that
have us
too,
too
because
smart
he-
pretty soon.
He did skip several things on there, so he really is.
Yeah, oh, and
But yeah, you'll want to.
We adjourned?
Yeah.
any mail on that?
A couple times.
I mean, you still know.
Tom, thank you.